There are plenty of people who support the aims of Just Stop Oil protesters as they campaign to reduce global warming. There are rather fewer who support their tactics. Tonight, the Prime Minister came down firmly on the side of those members of the public and against what he called a selfish minority. Mr Sunak held a summit meeting with police chiefs this evening and promised them whatever they need to stop illegal activity. And that includes new powers going through Parliament.
The government isn't listening to us, it isn't listening to the UN, it isn't listening to the International Energy Agency or 99% of the scientists across the earth. So what else are we to do but to continue causing this disruption? No matter what policing legislation they throw at us, more and more people keep coming forward to join the protests.
It's bad enough that they're passing a public order bill that would effectively give a blank cheque to the police to shut down all peaceful dissent in this country. That's bad enough. Now they're actually interfering with operational policing decisions as well. It's outrageous.
Nevertheless, the government is planning to throw more at these protesters, with the public order bill making its way through Parliament. It will make it a criminal offence for protesters to lock themselves to things or to obstruct major transport works. Stop and search powers will be extended, and there will be new powers to bar repeat offenders from certain areas.
It is completely unacceptable that ordinary members of the public are having their lives disrupted by a selfish minority. My view is that those who break the law should feel the full force of it, and that's what I'm determined to deliver.
Not only is that bill likely to pass through the House of Commons and the House of Lords within a few months, but today it's very clear that after that discussion with police, he's considering whether they could go further.
My biggest concern, if I can push back here, is that I think Parliament has created a problem for policing in terms of the rules set for protest.
It's actually having the opposite effect. I myself am determined to keep going because really what's coming down the line is much, much worse than a night in a police custody or 6 months in prison or even much longer. What's coming down the line is complete catastrophe, and they won't be able to arrest their way out of crop failure or drought.
Criticism after Michael Gove gives the go-ahead to the first new coal mine for 30 years.
I have never been as desperate as I feel right now. What we're seeing is nothing less, I think, than a climate crime against humanity. This is basically giving a green light not just for a coal mine in the UK, but undermining all of the work that we've been doing on the international stage.
We are flirting with climate disaster. Greenhouse gas emissions are at record levels and growing. The commitment to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees is nearly going up in smoke. And the consequences, as we all know, would be devastating.
Yes, a role for oil and gas as we transition, but no to new investment, because we've got to take this decision, and that's going to require leadership.
So no new oil investment or gas investment in the North Sea?
Yes.
We cannot let the oil companies and gas companies and petrostates tell us what is permissible. In the last COP, we were not allowed to even discuss scaling down oil and gas.
My good man, a moment of your time. In 80 days, people will come, tens of thousands of people outside these gates, to demand an upgrade to our democracy, to confront the emergency in our climate and in nature.
Shut up.
As the suffragettes were seized, so too will we be.
Shut up.
He voted with Just Stop Oil to water down the public order bill. And what do the unions and Just Stop Oil have in common? They bankroll him and his party, Mr. Speaker. So while he sides with extremist protesters and union bosses, we stand up for hard-working Britons and school children.
The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has hailed a major new report on climate change as a survival guide for humanity. Climate scientists from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said that clean energy and technology can be exploited to avoid the growing climate disaster. But they also warned a key global temperature goal will probably be missed. They say the world is expected to warm above 1.5 degrees Celsius by the early 2030s.
Continuing to drill for new oil and gas is an act of genocide, and the government knows it. We are demanding that the UK government immediately halts all new fossil fuel licences, and any less than that that's announced on Friday is a complete failure and a betrayal of me and my generation. Just before I came on, I heard that you were talking about the refugee crisis. How do you plan to adapt to 1 billion climate refugees?
Phoebe,
why aren't we implementing the scientific solutions that we have? Why aren't we switching to renewables, which are 9 times cheaper? Why aren't we insulating British homes?
Well,
why aren't we
let them
subsidising
answer.
public transport?
Let them answer your
questions. Why aren't we taxing big polluters and billionaires? These are no-brainer solutions.
All right.
We will be in London starting on the 24th of April. We will stay in London until our demand is met. Our demand is that government immediately halt all new fossil fuel licences.
And protests disrupted the World Snooker Championship at the Sheffield Crucible tonight. 2 Just Stop Oil protesters invaded the arena just as the evening's session of first-round matches was getting underway. One of them managed to empty a bag of orange powder onto one of the tables. Play was suspended for cleaning after the protesters were led away.
Meanwhile, a Just Stop Oil protester interrupted a first-round game during the World Snooker Championship. The resulting mayhem was so chaotic, several members of the audience woke up.
If we just stopped oil now, the lights would go out.
Well, we wouldn't have to see you then, would we? But we're not asking for that. We are asking for an end to new oil and gas licences.
But then we...
I work as a doctor. I care about people's health. I want people to have clean air, clean water and food to eat. The climate crisis puts all of those things in danger.
Extinction Rebellion says it has no plans to disrupt the London Marathon this Sunday, but there is no similar statement from Just Stop Oil. The world is now about 1.1 degrees warmer than it was in the 19th century, and temperatures are projected to rise by 2.4 degrees by the end of this century, even with the measures signed up to by the global community at climate summits. Are you going to disrupt the London Marathon?
Just Stop Oil will continue to disrupt cultural and sporting events until institutions come out and pick a side. So we want them to side with young people over new oil and gas.
So we're staying with environmental protests because some prison sentences have been handed out to Just Stop Oil protesters. Now, if you remember when 2 protesters scaled a bridge on the Dartford crossing, which caused gridlock when police then closed that bridge to traffic, well, Morgan Troland and Marcus Decker have been sentenced at Southend's Crown Court to 3 years in prison and 2 years and 7 months in prison, respectively, for causing a public nuisance.
So I am committed to making sure that we leave our environment in a much better state for you guys and everyone watching. I've got 2 young daughters, as I said, right? It's really important to me.
But if that's the case, why are you allowing more oil and gas exploration and coal mine? Well, you're building a new coal mine. I don't get it.
We don't want to be disrupting ordinary people, but we've tried non-disruptive protests for about 30 years since we've known about the climate crisis, and it hasn't been listened to. You know, the government has not listened to that. The only thing that gets the press, you know, journalists and presenters, they don't want to report on the climate crisis unless we cause public disruption.
The issue with these militant protesters is one that I know many of your listeners and indeed myself are incredibly frustrated. These eco-zealots are selfish, they are disruptive, they're causing misery. This is why we're passing the Public Order Bill, soon to be an act. We want to improve and increase the police powers available. We tried to amend the level of serious disruption recently. That was blocked by Labour. They preferred to side with the militant protesters.
Do you agree with the recommendations? I think it was by the policy exchange that there should be zero tolerance to these sort of events. And just this morning, we've seen protesters on Whitehall around Parliament Square, probably as you was coming into the building. Do you think it's time that you left the Ivory Tower and got out there on Whitehall and sorted these people out?
You're making selective comments based on a partial understanding of the law. You might want to believe that the law says that no disruption is allowed whatsoever through protest, but that is not the case.
We are predicted to hit 1.2 billion climate refugees by the year 2050. Look at how our government treats refugees now. They lock them up and they let them drown. What's going to
Today, I'm pleased to announce that the Public Order Bill has received royal assent from His Majesty the King. Those who seek to attack our ways of life repeatedly will be met with court orders preventing them from causing chaos again. I will ensure that people are able to go about their lives without being held to ransom by a minority of self-serving individuals.
The Met's commissioner has defended his officers over the arrest of 6 anti-monarchy protesters early on Coronation Day, while critics of the government's controversial changes to the Public Order Act said it showed that new police powers were much too broad.
And this is how much police that warrants. For 4 people standing behind a barrier.
You're under arrest, okay, for press.
You're arresting a journalist.
Okay. Can we just, I'm not saying that's not wrong, but let's just double check that.
But it wasn't just protesters caught up in arrests. Documentary maker Rich Felgate was filming activists in Whitehall when he was arrested, then held for 18 hours without explanation.
At this time, okay, you can put that away, please, sir. Put it away.
The police have also defended their actions, which included using facial recognition cameras.
I asked for and was given by ministers assurances that this legislation would not impede upon journalistic freedoms. And yet on Saturday we saw at least one journalist stopped and searched, nothing found, handcuffed, his credentials torn off him, and then detained for 16 hours, a member of BEC2, a professional filmmaker.
A peaceful protest, albeit a noisy protest, is a perfectly legitimate thing to do. It's something I entirely endorse. Yes, it would have been raucous and distracting, and some people would have found it annoying. But ultimately, that's the price, the very small price we pay to live in a free and open society.
Proximity to the route and what they had in front of them, those officers believed that those could be items that could be used for locking on. It would have aroused suspicion of the officers.
You usually use a combination lock to stop.
We're here today to declare democracy.
The proceeding is currently suspended.
Wearing a t-shirt isn't illegal. We should not have been arrested for wearing t-shirts. We were on the coronation. On the coronation, we were arrested for wearing t-shirts.
Thank you.
Let's turn to extraordinary pictures now from North America, where tens of millions of people have been warned about potentially dangerous air quality as intense wildfires burn across Canada. A haze hangs over much of northeastern US, with some cities, including New York there, briefly reporting the worst air quality of any major city in the world.
The Prime Minister has previously declared, and I quote, "My daughter is the climate change champion in our house." I wonder if he's asked her what she thinks about Rosebank, the biggest undeveloped oil field in the North Sea, which would blow climate targets, create more emissions than 28 of the world's poorest countries combined, and do nothing for energy security since the vast majority of the oil will be exported.
What will it do if we issue more oil licenses? It will just put fuel on the fire. Why doesn't our government get it? Why aren't they listening to their advisors?
They tell me, why don't you become a climate scientist? Raise awareness. It's already too late. We know the science. We know the terrible future that is coming for us.
Other news now, and let me just warn you that the images that you see next do show some aggressive behaviour, because a man has been filmed pushing Just Stop Oil protesters, one of them to the ground, and snatching banners from them during a slow walk in East London. He continues to push the climate activists to clear them away, while the protesters have been holding daily slow march protests since last month. Police urge the public not to intervene and wait for officers to arrive.
People worldwide are angry about government. The world signed an agreement in 2015 in Paris to reduce greenhouse gases by a certain percentage. Well, 70% of the countries have not really lived up to their promise. Times have changed, and we have to change with them. Trust me, you don't want to be the old out-of-touch boomer.
We're seeing people drowning in floods in Italy. Climate crisis is here, there's no doubt about that. The only way we're going to address that is to stop the consumption of fossil fuels. We cannot be building new coal mines.
The naturalist also said that he supports environmental campaigners like Just Stop Oil.
They promote conversation. You know, they get people thinking about that. And if sometimes people have to take extreme steps, then yes, I do support that.
The United Nations General Secretary has explained that the true criminal radicals are the governments that are still licensing you oil and gas.
I think it's very worrying that we lock people up that are actually trying to make sure that we have some kind of future. I understand why people can get upset because it's disruptive demonstration. Actually, they do stuff knowing that they'll probably be locked up, and I kind of admire that in a way. And I know it angers a lot of people, but that's kind of what they want because it's the only way it gets publicised, and it's the only reason we're talking about it now. If we manage to save this, save the human race from 50 years or 100 years' time, and we still exist, and they'll look back on people like that, and they might well be the heroes.
You can see why the game has to be stopped.
I'm here because I value life over money and life over the devastation of everything.
It's time to wake up and step up. Trading the future for 30 pieces of silver is immoral. There is simply too much at stake for us to be silent. The world is watching and the planet can't wait.
We are exercising our democratic right to protest. Marching in the roads. Is it really necessary to handcuff a peaceful protester?
All of the ocean temperatures are off the charts. No one's seen temperatures like it. This is climate breakdown, and it's happening now.
I don't have a future if we're continuing the way we are. And I want a fucking future.
Over the last 6 weeks alone, Just Stop Oil has carried out 156 slow marches around London. In some cases, the protests have aggravated the public so much that they've taken matters into their own hands. They've lost their patience. The police must be able to stop this happening, and it's our job in government to give them the powers to do so.
Now, the Home Secretary is claiming today that this latest measure is about slow walking. But that's already a breach of the law. Since 1986, the police have had the power to impose conditions on public processions. That's what slow walking is. And indeed, the policing minister said the police are using Section 12 of the Public Order Act 1986. The roads have typically been cleared within 10 minutes. The Home Secretary just keeps coming back to Parliament, waving another bit of legislation to chase a few more headlines and distract people from the fact that it's this government that is hell-bent on causing chaos and disruption for the British people. It's because this isn't about Just Stop Oil, it's about a Conservative Party that has just stopped governing.
So I just want to remind people that when people are taking peaceful direct action, they are doing so because they are generally driven to feel that they have no alternative. They feel that the government is careering over a climate cliff edge and they are trying to get hold of the wheel. And I will just end by quoting the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who reminded us that climate activists are sometimes depicted as dangerous radicals, but the truly dangerous radicals are the countries that are increasing the production of fossil fuels. Investing in new fossil fuel infrastructure is moral and economic madness.
Pick a side! We don't have time to waste anymore!
Supporters of the Just Stop Oil group have staged another protest, this time at the second Ashes test at Lord's. The environmental activists ran onto the pitch with orange paint just 5 minutes into the match between England and Australia.
This was the moment the UK's 51st Pride March came to a standstill.
The police have now just arrived, but there is a complete block on the road, stopping anyone from getting past.
Police say 7 protesters were arrested, but it was just the publicity Just Stop Oil were hoping for.
There's been, I guess, more scrutiny about where you've been giving your money, right? £1.5 million to the Labour Party over the last 10 years, as revealed by Sky News back in January, and also, of course, money to Just Stop Oil. Is that a problem?
For me, no. Because, I also give money to Greenpeace, to Sea Shepherd, to a women's refuge, to school breakfast clubs, to food banks, the list goes on.
Rishi Sunak, for example, recently said, it does appear that those eco-zealots at Just Stop Oil are writing Keir Starmer's energy policy. Not content with disrupting our summer and cherished sporting events, they're essentially leading us into an energy surrender.
Because if you look at what the Conservatives are doing, they're drilling for oil and gas in the teeth of a climate crisis, claiming it will lower energy bills when it can't.
But the disruption to roads, where people might be trying to use ambulances to get to hospitals...
Well, look, I was on a protest around Parliament Square a few weeks ago, and they have a fantastic process for allowing flashing blue lights through. It really works, and there were 2 while I was there. It's not as bad as it sounds. Central London traffic isn't very fast anyway.
Wait, please. Players in, players in.
Play at Wimbledon was briefly suspended twice when Just Stop Oil protesters threw confetti and jigsaw pieces onto the grass. An All England club said 2 people had been arrested and removed from the grounds.
I did think there was something slightly artistic about that glitter, and also it made me laugh that there were jigsaws. Cool. They bought the jigsaw at the Wimbledon shop.
Protests that make an impact are always annoying. They always have been throughout history. The rights and freedoms a lot of people, all of us have, were won because of people being annoying. How's this going to look in 30 years, this discussion? How's it going to look when we have more extreme droughts, famines, extreme weather events, millions of people driven from their homes? We had the hottest day on Earth since records began on Tuesday. The second hottest day was Monday. Millions of people are going to die. I'm really sorry to have to spell this out, and that's because we've put emissions into the atmosphere, trapped in the heat, and it has consequences.
It's a climate crisis.
What they're actually trying to do is say, instead of drilling for oil and gas, we should focus on the renewable energy of the future.
Yeah, sure.
We're going to run out of oil and gas anyway, but if you focus on oil and gas, you're going to put emissions into the atmosphere, and what that's going to do is destroy the planet. We had lots of protests where people marched and had lovely placards and waved them around. Do you know how much media coverage they got? Absolutely nothing.
On Just Stop Oil, I just think they need to just stop. They're in, particularly this last week, they've been interrupting iconic sporting events, causing massive disruption.
Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary-General, says that we're on a highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. The most recent report from the UN's climate body is an atlas of human suffering. It is code red for humanity.
These heat waves are not normal. They are induced by the continual burning of fossil fuels. 40-degree heat in the UK is not normal.
We can't let them intimidate us like this. People around the world are rising up to stop the oil and gas, and we will not.
So the former minister, Zach Goldsmith, quit last week over what he called Rishi Sunak's climate apathy. Has this government dropped its commitment to fight climate change?
So Zach Goldsmith said, the problem, and he was talking to the Prime Minister, the problem is not that the government is hostile to the environment, it is that you, our Prime Minister, are simply uninterested.
Last year, the UN said it was moral and economic madness to drill for fossil fuels. This is what our government are doing. Meanwhile, they maintain the ban on onshore wind, our cheapest, fastest, cleanest form of energy that we can build, and they're very unhelpful to large solar as well. We can get to 100% green energy in our economy in just 10 years with no public money, because these technologies need no public money, and we can have permanently low energy bills, eradicate fuel poverty, and be energy independent as a country, creating hundreds of thousands of really good long-term jobs. It's a wonderful opportunity for us, and our government have turned their back on it because they want to make green issues part of the culture war. Every pound we invest in fossil fuels, if we invest instead in renewable energy, we get 2.5 times more jobs and we get twice as much GDP growth. It's foolish to invest in fossil fuels.
I'm here for my children. They don't have a future. My children don't have a future. You're hurting my friend. Please don't hurt her.
This is not part of the show. This is not part of the show. Do you know what? Oh, I'm not allowed. Okay.
Italian authorities have strengthened heat warnings at the start of a brutally hot week and on a day that's set to be one of the hottest ever recorded. It comes on the back of a string of heat records being broken across the world. Parts of southern Europe could reach close to 50 Celsius over the next few days. Here, the government has, in the last hour, released its plans on how to adapt to climate change. It outlines how it will protect infrastructure, food production and promote a greener economy. But it's also been criticised as falling far short of protecting lives and livelihoods.
The Prime Minister was noticeably more comfortable talking about the action the government is taking against eco-protesters like Just Stop Oil, rather than the measures that the government is putting in place looking forward in tackling climate change.
You can hear the crowd cheering, so hopefully there won't be any break in the Gulf here.
I'll bring you some breaking news. We're hearing that Just Stop Oil has disrupted the British Open this afternoon. 3 Just Stop Oil supporters have run onto the 17th hole of the Open in Royal Liverpool. This happened, 3 of them running on to the 17th hole, setting off a smoke flare and throwing orange powder paint onto the green before being swiftly removed by security. So that's Just Stop Oil demanding that the UK government halt all new licences and consents for oil, gas and coal projects.
Fucking idiot! Stop recording! Fucking little shit!
Unless we cause material disruption, it just doesn't get reported. I was on the streets of London with 100,000 other people at the end of April, and it got barely any media coverage, and we peacefully surrounded Parliament.
I'm issuing you with a Section 12 notice to leave the road. By all means, carry on the protest at the side of the road.
We have a very, very clear blue light policy. I was on the roads a couple of weeks ago. We did a full week of slow marching. We have an extremely clear blue light policy. We get off the road whenever there are any emergency vehicles. Often we're only on the road for 2, 3 or 5 minutes. The delays are very short. London roads are delayed all the time by heavy traffic. This is tiny, tiny delays. We get out of the way for blue lights. We have to see things in perspective. Peer-reviewed science says at least 1 billion people are going to be in conditions that are not livable by the end of this decade. We must connect with the reality. That means supply chains fail. That means economic failure. That's goodbye to our public services. That's goodbye to our stable food supply. There was a peer-reviewed paper only this week saying that there is increasing risk of global food failures, global crop failures around the world. We have to get real about this.
Well, the effect of global warming is being seen in extreme weather across the world, and it's caused 2 world leaders this week to declare that climate change is real and upon us.
I don't think anybody can deny the impact of climate change anymore. The record temperatures, and I mean record, are now affecting more than 100 million Americans. Even those who deny that we're in the midst of a climate crisis can't deny the impact of extreme heat is having on Americans. The #1 weather-related killer is heat.
For the entire planet, it is a disaster. And for scientists, it is unequivocal. Humans are to blame. Climate change is here, it is terrifying, and it is just the beginning. The era of global warming has ended, the era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable, The heat is unbearable, and the level of fossil fuel profits and climate inaction is unacceptable. The evidence is everywhere. Humanity has unleashed destruction. This must not inspire despair, but action. We can still stop the worst.
The powers I'm using are Section 12 under the Public Order Act. If you do not move onto the pavement, you will be arrested.
Well done. Thank you for having the courage I don't have.
There's a huge disconnect between life in the UK and what's going on a few hours away at the moment. Because every story about the effects of the heat wave was contrasted with one about both parties threatening to roll back climate change policies. Then there was this Sky News clip. Check this one out. They've got footage of, like, Greece on fire, and at the bottom of the screen, it's Michael Gove condemning the actions of Just Stop Oil. It's happening at the same time. We're sleepwalking into a catastrophe.
Lord Deaton, a former Conservative Environment Secretary, led the Climate Change Committee for over a decade.
He said that all of us should make a nuisance of ourselves. There are groups like Just Stop Oil who are annoying the public. What do you think of their tactics?
Well, I'm not in favour of their tactics. I think they're counterproductive. I don't think that works. The only way that we will get done what we need to get done is to get politicians to change the law.
Look, Mark, if this were a war, we wouldn't be arguing about whether the Labour strategy or the Tory strategy were better. We'd be working together to try and win. Well, it is a war. It's a war for survival, and climate change threatens everything. It threatens our food security through drought and desertification. It threatens our homes and our cities through floods and coastal inundation. What we need to be doing is saying, let's get together, let's mobilise on a war footing, and that's what's needed.
I look at the Just Stop Oil protests. Instinctively, my gut feeling is that they're right.
Every radical movement for change needs a radical wing that draw our attention to things. These people are prepared to put their liberty on the line to defend something that they passionately believe in.
It's October tomorrow. We're coming to the end of September. It does feel like it's been really warm. You know, out again in T-shirts yesterday, no coats required.
And the Met Office are saying that here in the UK, we could potentially be experiencing one of our warmest Septembers on record. Now, bear with me on this one. I'm about to show you a graph, but what it shows is global temperature each year since 1850. Each one is a line, but it's this black one I'm interested in. This is the current year, 2023. Notice just how far above any previous year that we have had on record. Climate scientists and Berkeley Earth, who produced the graph, saying it is very likely we will see this current year as the warmest ever year on record.
Welcome to this crucial summit on climate change.
Humanity has opened the gates of hell. Horrendous heat is having horrendous effects. If nothing changes, we are heading towards a 2.8 degree temperature rise, towards a dangerous and unstable world.
Roger Hallam co-founded both Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil. He's been imprisoned himself for his activities. Roger's vision does not include violence. It's a non-violent, peaceful uprising of ordinary people who've had enough.
I'm going to make a proposition to you, right? That society is basically a community. It's a community of love. It's a community of morality. It's a community of connection. If we don't have all those things in our lives, then we go mentally ill pretty quickly. And what public, disruptive, non-violent action does is pricks the conscience. And it's not about blowing things up. This is a grandmother walking down the pavement. Everyone walks down the pavement and then gets dragged off by the police. That violates the British sense of fair play. I can tell you with absolute categorical certainty that major things will happen when public figures do what public figures have always done at times of crisis, which is lead.
What I would say is that I think Rosebank is the wrong decision. The decision that's been made today is not the right decision to be made. Scotland's future, the North East future, is the net zero capital, not just of Europe, but of, I hope, the world. And of course, new oil and gas licences being given the go-ahead will slow the pace of that transition down. I want to accelerate that transition and take the workers with us.
On Wednesday night, a famous zoologist was on a mission to save the planet on Channel 4.
I think Chris Packham's becoming a bit of a disruptor.
If Chris Packham asked me to break the law, I'd probably say yes.
Because you know he'd ask you for a good reason.
This would be about protesting, and he's saying, we waited, it's not changing, we've got to take drastic measures.
We are sleepwalking to an apocalypse.
The wildfires, the floods, it's literally, it is like apocalyptic Bible shit.
We've got children, grandchildren that are going to come into this world. What kind of world is it going to be?
A shit one.
I got my first pair of binoculars in 1970, and since then we've lost 69% of the world's wildlife.
Fucking hell, what?
That's a shocking number.
That is.
That is frightening, 69% in 53 years.
The target for the action this morning is the policy exchange. And recently, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, had said that they were influential when it came to drafting new legislation to crack down on protesters.
They're attacking the think tank that influences their ability to protest.
I do understand Chris's point. I genuinely do.
Yeah.
But where's the affordable solution? You know, you look at all these electric cars.
Might have known that'd be coming from you. If it's going to cost me, I'm not interested. Let the world burn.
No, no, no.
Well, breaking news with these pictures for you. As you can see, protests. This is the set of Les Mis in the West End. Just Stop Oil protesters have disrupted a staging of the musical Les Miserables at the Sondheim Theatre in Westminster, carrying banners, Just Stop Oil, and the show can't go on. They emerged apparently during the song's crescendo of One More Day, if you know it, amongst actors bearing revolutionary red flags. The performance was halted and the theatre was evacuated. 23-year-old community worker Hannah Taylor, she says the show starts with Jean Valjean stealing a loaf of bread to feed his sister's starving child. Am I not like Jean Valjean, justified in breaking the law to oppose this criminal government and what she said was its murderous policies?
I'd be annoyed about it. We don't like things we like being disrupted, but there's nothing more disruptive than the climate emergency and the impact it will have on all of us. Because what it does is raise attention to the fact that our species is in danger.
When 5 Just Stop Oil activists also stopped Les Mis being performed on Wednesday night, the crowd just booed them. Maybe a straw in the wind, but add that to sentiment to Rishi Sunak's edging back from some net zero policies, and somehow stopping global warming has turned into what they call a culture war issue. That's why green energy industrialist Dale Vince announced today he's pulling his funding of green protest groups, of which Just Stop Oil is the most high profile. He wants to focus instead on giving young voters the means to vote and believes that further direct action is now playing into the Conservatives' hands.
The recent history is I did fund Just Stop Oil. I believed in the cause. I still believe in the cause, just not the method now. The tactic, I think, that's been turned against us as environmentalists. It's been weaponized by the Conservative Party. We have an election coming. I want to now put my energy into something else, a different way to stop oil.
At times of crisis before, people have stepped up. People have realised the laws are fucking unjust. They're killing people.
The University of Exeter building has been dabbed with paint by a Just Stop Oil supporter. The university said it respects the right to protest, providing it's carried out safely, respectfully, and within the law. Police have arrested a man on suspicion of criminal damage.
There is no future in new oil and gas licenses. It needs to go. The world can't continue like this.
Stand with us for civil resistance.
our government's licensing new oil and gas projects. It's genocide for hundreds of millions of people across the world. This university is completely in genocide. We have to act. Students across the country have to get into civil resistance. We don't have long left. We are demanding that the UK government immediately cease all new licences. Simplify after simplify. Fossil fuels are a death sentence. Sign up with Just Stop Oil.
Just Stop Oil activists were out in force in Westminster this morning. It's part of a new 3-week campaign, but this time they were met with a swift response from the Metropolitan Police. They made 60 arrests in under an hour.
But the group, who are calling for an end to new oil and gas licences, believe disruption like this is the best way to get their message across. Just Stop Oil says today was only the first in a series of demonstrations planned over the next 3 weeks, with the aim of causing disruption on an unprecedented scale.
Women did not get the vote by voting. It is time for deeds and not words. It is time to just stop oil.
2 Just Stop Oil activists were arrested this morning after smashing the glass protecting a painting at London's National Gallery. The pair, both in their 20s, used safety hammers to smash the glass in front of a work by Diego Velázquez. It dates from the 1600s and was previously slashed by suffragette Mary Richardson in 1914.
Legislation will be introduced to strengthen the United Kingdom's energy security and reduce reliance on volatile international energy markets and hostile foreign regimes. This bill will support the future licensing of new oil and gas fields.
As a healthcare professional, the government's response to climate change terrifies me. It is the greatest threat to human health that the UN has declared. We're seeing currently unprecedented droughts in the Amazon. We're seeing the collapse of the West Antarctic ice sheet. We're seeing the collapse of the Greenland ice sheet. We're seeing sea temperatures rise faster than ever before. This is killing people in their thousands across the world on an annual basis. When are they going to start acting like it is an emergency?
We can't just stop using oil and gas overnight. We can decide whether or not we wish to import it from countries across the world, many of which are in quite unstable places, or whether we wish to make use of the oil and gas that lies off our own shores. And in doing so, we increase our energy security.
Exactly
we increase
how?
the amount
Just
of money
explain
that goes to the treasury.
Exactly how do we increase energy security by doing it? If the oil or gas is drilled and a private company then decides it's going to sell it on the open market to whoever it wants to sell it to, how does that help Britain's energy security? We will surely be in line along with everyone else buying it.
I think you'll find that if we had to, we could make sure that it came into the United Kingdom. For a start, it would have to go via the United Kingdom to get out.
So how, what, you would force the company, the private
I'm not going to get into a
in order to sell it to us at a time
very hypothetical.
Well, you're saying it would increase our energy security.
We're not there,
I'm just trying
are we?
to understand.
Well, we're not there yet. So the other point I wanted to make is there are.
Have you understood it?
No.
No, they're saying.
The reason I'm a doctor is the same reason I'm a supporter of Just Stop Oil. It's because I've asked myself, what are my core values? What do I really believe in? And the answer is, I believe everyone has the right to safety, security, and to health. Any new drilling in the North Sea directly threatens the safety and security of the British people, and it locks in the deaths of human beings. And you can either acknowledge that Just Stop Oil are right, or you can find a way to dismiss them, because if they're bad people, if they don't care, if they're nasty, then whatever they say is not true. I use oil, everyone uses oil. What we're saying is we all need to get off oil. And the hypocrite argument, saying, well, you're hypocrites, is just another way of saying I don't need to listen to the fact that you're right, that all of our lives are at risk.
Robert.
That we are locking in the deaths of human beings. Just Stop Oil are very unpopular. 17% of the country approve us. 14% of the country approve of the government. We're more popular than the government, okay?
Right,
but the question is, when you ask people, do you want more drilling in the North Sea? The number one answer is no, thank you very much, okay? In any normal times, blocking roads, smashing up paintings, all of this is wrong, okay? But we are not in normal times. We are at a unique moment in the whole history of humanity where what we do now will either lock in the deaths of a very large chunk of the population of the planet, or the other track is that we have a future. In the Second World War, it took a matter of weeks to switch factories producing cars to factories that produced the Spitfires that my own grandfather piloted during the Second World War. The British people are so capable of making this happen.
Commit an offence under Section 7 of the Public Order Act 2023, they can be liable for arrest.
How does it feel knowing that the general public aren't really supportive of your actions?
This isn't the X factor. You don't need to be popular to make change. We're doing what we know is effective because we've seen it throughout history.
Why not become an MP, impact change from the inside?
Because by the time that I would even graduate from university, we may well have crossed irreversible climate tipping points.
Hundreds of Just Stop Oil protesters have marched through the capital this afternoon. They set off from the London Eye, near the headquarters of Shell, crossed Blackfriars Bridge and made their way along Fleet Street. More protests are planned at Trafalgar Square from Monday to Friday next week. We're going to be arrested today for the Public Order Act. That Public Order Act was written by Policy Exchange. Policy Exchange is funded by ExxonMobil. So we are going to be arrested by a law that was written from ExxonMobil, the oil giants that are killing us. Oh, you're hurting me, you're hurting me.
We know that we sometimes cause disruption. We do everything we can to minimise that. We have a very clear blue light policy, etc. We understand from Freedom of Information requests that the ambulance service doesn't report any significant delays caused by Just Stop Oil actions. Civil resistance, which is what Just Stop Oil is doing, does make a difference. It does cut through. We know that from history, but we also know that from this year. Thousands of people in the Netherlands marched peacefully day after day and blocked the A12 in The Hague for 27 days in a row. 9,000 arrests over 27 days, completely non-violent action. And that forced the police forces to go to the politicians and say, you have to negotiate with these people. This government, this state, the judiciary are currently locking up teenagers. There are 18 and 19-year-olds in prison right now without trial for peacefully walking on the road because they are desperate for a future. Politicians are going to put proposals forward to end new subsidies. Okay. So you all have so much power. Don't let people tell you that this is not the right way to do things.
Fuck off! Fuck off, you old cunt. And you fucking shit cunt. You love kids, don't ya? Fucking pedophile cunt, mate. Face off.
Now, a United Nations expert has warned the government that the jail sentences handed to two Just Stop Oil climate protesters who scaled the Dartford crossing last year, causing traffic gridlock, could stifle protest.
People think, listening to this, really think it's reasonable for people to be in prison for 3 years for causing some disruption in the face of the crisis that we're facing and the magnitude of that crisis. I think we all need to note that the UN is watching this country very, very closely.
The UN wants more lenient sentencing, but the Prime Minister insists jail terms should be longer.
June, July, August, September and October were all the hottest on record. Present trends are racing our planet down a dead-end 3-degree temperature rise. In short, the report shows that the emissions gap is more like an emissions canyon. A canyon littered with broken promises, broken lives, and broken records.
So we spoke to a climate scientist this morning in the week of COP28 who said the one thing you could do is no new licences. But you've granted hundreds of new North Sea oil and gas licences.
Yeah, because that's just a naive view. The Committee on Climate Change is clear that oil and gas will continue to be a part of our energy mix. The choice is either we import that oil and gas or we use what is domestically available. It's far better for the economy that we use our domestic
or
production.
we invest in renewables.
But we're also,
Are you comfortable with the fact that the host of COP28, the UAE, is planning to use the climate change talks to push its own oil and gas interests?
Dr. Sultan, reports in The Guardian of your comments that there is no science behind calls to cut fossil fuels. Do you accept that language like this and talk of people living in caves could contribute to a loss of public confidence in this COP outside of the negotiating bubble here on site?
I can't stand by whilst this is happening. War crimes are going to happen, starvation is going to happen. You must join us.
This is the COP conference, isn't it? Yeah, I saved crude oil. Yes, they've changed the language on fossil fuels, so they're going to transition from fossil fuels.
It's almost as if it was held in Dubai. I mean, that's like having an AA meeting in Wetherspoons.
I'm a father, got 2 children, 5 and 8 years old. And it's scientifically evident that they're going to live through mass death. New oil and gas is genocidal. I'm just doing what any dad would do, to pick a side, do the right thing, stand up for our children.
What one single outcome would the panel like to see from the COP28 annual climate conference?
George, can you pick one?
Leave fossil fuels in the ground. It's so simple. And unless we leave fossil fuels in the ground, we have absolutely no hope of preventing climate breakdown. And while we wait and wait, the years tick by, and we've got so few years left now. I mean, this is the most important predicament humanity has ever faced. And by design, as a result of the enormous oppressive power of the fossil fuel industry, we're flunking it.
The government of the UK now is seemingly, maybe I'm wrong, but they seem to be in the pocket of the fossil fuel companies.
World leaders can't save the planet with a fire hose of fossil fuels. That was the warning from the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, to the COP28 summit in Dubai, after scientists said that 2023 was set to be the warmest year in history. The leaders also heard from King Charles, who urged them to take genuine transformational action to curb greenhouse gas transmissions.
Records are now being broken so often that we are perhaps becoming immune to what they are really telling us. When we see the news that this last Northern Hemisphere summer, for instance, was the warmest global average temperature on record, we need to pause to process what this actually means. We are taking the natural world outside balanced norms and limits and into dangerous, uncharted territory. Ladies and gentlemen, in your hands is an unmissable opportunity to keep our common hope alive. I can only urge you to meet it with ambition, imagination, and a true sense of the emergency we face. After all, ladies and gentlemen, in 2050, our grandchildren won't be asking what we said. They will be living with the consequences of what we did or didn't do. And we need to remember, too, that the indigenous worldview teaches us that we are all connected, not only as human beings, but with all living things and all that sustains life. As part of this grand and sacred system, harmony with nature must be maintained. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth.